Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL. Breaking down pitchers for today's Friday slate, and we got some decent options on like the last 2 days. Some couple high-priced guys, and I mean, really, we're not digging too deep for value on the bump tonight. We'll start things off with Chris Archer, 10,700 on DK. Over here on FanDuel, he is 11,100. So a little pricey. He's in a good spot to rack up some Ks. He's got the highest K percentage on that night slate here. Is the price the only thing that's really, kind of scaring you off of him in cash games?
It really is. Plus, you're looking at Baltimore. That's not a very good pitcher-friendly park. The Orioles, of course, have a lot of power in that lineup. Machado, Chris Davis, Adam Jones, and some of the role players are hitting pretty well also. So, I mean, just the combination of those two things, plus the fact that there's some really decent mid-range pitchers that we'll get into a little bit later. It just really has me looking at Archer as a GPP only play. That's if you can make the salaries mesh, because there's also a lot of top dollar bats that you want to stack into your lineup, like the Cubs and Blue Jays tonight. So I mean, it just really doesn't look good for Archer for fantasy purposes tonight. So I'm thinking tournament only.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I think, price considered, he's just too high up there, especially if he kind of puts up a similar outing. I guess obviously 12 strikeouts in his first matchup against the Jays is expecting a little too much, but
in 5 innings.
Yeah, I mean, if he gives up a couple runs and only notches maybe 7 or 8, he's definitely not paying off that price tag. And as you mentioned, Camden Yards very friendly. I mean, if he was a little bit cheaper, I think I'd take more shots at him, but I'm with you there in that matchup. It's a little tough. Looking at Francisco Liriano on the road in Cincinnati, Great American Ballpark, which is another not friendly park. We were, discussing weather before the game. Looks like that one's going to be in a little bit of a delay until about 8:30. Should get that one either way. You're looking at him. I think he's an intriguing option, although 400 less on DK kind of puts you in, the more you look at it now, it's a little bit different than I was looking at this morning, because I was kind of all in on Liriano on DK, but FanDuel, I think there's a decent enough price tag where if I can fit the right bats in with him, he'll be my guy.
Yeah, I like Liriano, and if you look at my Pitcher Pulse article, I wrote it with the assumption that the weather was a little bit questionable there, so I really didn't know if I wanted to risk it or not, especially with some other good options. But it looks like the weather's going to be actually okay. I mean, permitting it doesn't change too much. Looks like the rain's going to be the first part of that game, so maybe a little bit of a delay, and then we should be good to go. It's a pretty decent matchup, not a great ballpark for pitcher purposes, but as you mentioned before the show, very strong ground ball rate for Liriano, decent strikeout rate as we've seen, as we saw on Sunday. So all those things look pretty well, and the Reds really don't have many right-handed power bats to give them fits. I know Joey Votto as a left-hander hits southpaws pretty well, so that's a little bit of a concern there. But other than that, I mean, nothing you're really worried about as you're watching him, go through this lineup.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Looking at the Reds last season, of course, this was with Todd Frazier, just a 92 WRC plus against lefties. They ranked, in the bottom half in ISO and WOBA as well. So I think the only thing that possibly scares me off of him tonight is just that part of the wind blowing out and some weather issues. So he could be I could be spinning down from him, but I think overall he's looking like a pretty safe cash game option for me.
Yep.
Looking down the list here, Jaime Garcia goes on the road against Atlanta, 9,400. I'm not completely in love with the price tag on DK, as well as FanDuel as well at 8,900, but a pretty heavy favorite. He should be backed by some decent offense going up against Matt Whistler, who struggles against left-handers. I think he's a safe bet for a win. I mean, he's been a good pitcher. The biggest question with him is always just staying healthy.
Right. A little bit of a funny story before I get into the breakdown. As I woke up this morning, I always go through all the pitchers, all the odds and everything. And this was well before the coffee kicked in this morning. I went to scoresandodds.com, and I saw they had it misspelled. It wasn't Garcia. It was Garca at Atlanta. And I was like, what the hell? Who's this Garca guy? A left-hander from St. Louis, not even registering with me that it was Garcia misspelled, even though I watched this guy pitch like 10 plus times. So I was hunting down on the internet looking for something on Garca. And finally it came up on Google. Did you mean Garcia? I was like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the guy. But anyway, yeah, I do like him a lot tonight. I don't know if he has a lot of upside despite a really good matchup,
yeah.
pitcher friendly park, but he's just one of those solid cash game guys that you can plug in and feel really good about. And he'll give you a chance with your cash game teams and tournament teams if the bats go off around him. Pretty non-imposing price, right around Ventura and some other guys we're looking at. We'll get into a little bit later. So I really like him as kind of a stable, high floor pick tonight.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I think, usually you're looking for a little more strikeout upside out of your pitchers. I don't think Garcia has that just because Atlanta doesn't have a high strikeout rate, and he's not that type of pitcher anyway. Which is why I think I'm definitely turned off on him in GPPs, just because it's a high price tag that I definitely want more out of for tournaments. And I think that kind of transitions into the next guy, your Dono Ventura, who does have that upside going up against the Twins, who are kind of a boomer bust offense just because they have a ton of power. They can get to pitchers and chase them early if they knock a few out of the yard. But they also carry a pretty high strikeout rate.
Yeah, and it really pains me to mention this pick with this hat on my head. But Ventura, he's just in a great spot tonight. I mean, pitcher-friendly park at Kauffman. The Twins don't hit for average. They just hit home runs sometimes, and that's just really Sano. So, I mean, it just really all adds up to Ventura. He has a pretty good strikeout rate to begin with. And the Twins against the Orioles in that 3-game series to start the year struck out 10-plus times in every game. So you saw some pretty mediocre pitchers like Jimenez and even Tillman for 2 innings just really go off and strike out, just really mow down the Twins' meat of their lineup with that high heat. And as we know, Ventura, that's all he does is throw gas, so he could get the Twins chasing again. And if they get a hold of one, Kauffman Stadium could very likely hold it in. So just a great situation there for Ventura. He's in line to pick up a win here as well, minus 160 money line. So all those things really play into him as being one of my favorite per dollar pitchers in all formats.
Yeah, and he is one of the higher favorites. According to Vegas, you're looking at Garcia being minus 154. Taijuan Walker, who we'll talk about in a little bit, minus 157. So he's definitely in a good spot to get a win tonight. I think that price tag's pretty solid. As my only pitcher on FanDuel, I guess you can feel a little iffy about it. I think I'll be relying on him a little bit more on DK. You kind of in agreement there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to have plenty of shares of him on FanDuel as well, just because I love that upside. I think he's relatively safe tonight. But, I mean, there's so many other guys to go with that, like we said, I think Garcia might be a little more stable. But I'm more than likely chasing the upside there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Taijuan Walker, he's another one. Vegas likes this game as far as a Seattle win. An 8 total, and I expect most of that 8 to come from the Seattle side with a bad lefty on the hill. You in agreement? All right. Looks like we lost Spencer there. Wrapping things up here as we go on. I'll be taking a look at Taijuan Walker, who you like the strikeout rate that he brings to the table. You're looking at Oakland, not a big strikeout team, but outside of that, I mean, Walker in a pitcher-friendly park in Safeco. I mean, really, minus 157. An 8-game total there. So I'll definitely be looking at him because I do expect Seattle to really back him with this team, especially with the lefty going on against Oakland. Guys like Nelson Cruz, Franklin Gutierrez. So definitely look at him. Outside of that, I mean, there's not a whole lot. I think Walker's a great GPP play. You're not looking too much lower. Jason Hamill's a guy who's interesting in tournaments just because he's a cheaper price tag, tough on right-handers. But as you've seen, Chase Field has just, plowed through a ton of runs, and that's the one area where it's concerning. So outside of that, I mean, other than that, you're looking at guys like Robbie Ray, Matt Whistler, Matt Cain, Chase Anderson, Chris Tillman down low. And check out the slate breakdown because Josh dug into Chris Tillman a little bit because he talked about an increased velocity. Obviously, a matchup against the Rays. A middle of the road offense there who I like taking a shot in GPPs with as a value stack. But really, you saw Tillman really air it out in that first game where he had 5 Ks through the first 6 batters. So it could be something to watch, but also Camden Yards is not a favorable spot for pitchers. But definitely, Josh will break it down more so because I'm not really on him that much tonight. And before the show, Spencer and I were talking about Tillman. It's only if we're playing, a huge amount of lineups that maybe he'll find his way into too. So, I mean, you're really staying away from guys like Eric Surkamp, Alfredo, Simon, Schumacher, Feldman, Anderson, guys you're staying away from. So keep an eye on the weather there in Cincinnati. That is one to keep an eye on. Looking elsewhere, I mean, Jaime Garcia, Ventura, kind of your safer options. Walker and Archer are more of your GPP plays. So it's a pretty top-heavy night that you want to stick with. So that's going to wrap things up here. We lost Spencer mid-show, had a little battery issue as he seems to do most of the time when we come on, but it's always at a pretty opportune spot as we wrap up the pitcher nail down. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.